Good afternoon. We're almost winding down. We still have some exciting panels ahead of us. So, to my immediate left is Jason Gerald, who runs Next Gen Interactions. He's actually a real leader in this industry. He's worked and consulted with the likes of Valve, Oculus. He's put content together for SeaGraph. He built the video game used in Shark Tank, right, for the virtual reality. So he's had his, he's been involved with a lot of different projects, and it's always a pleasure watching moderate panels and of course work with and use the products of the companies that he's involved with. Let me also introduce you to our panelists from left to right. Neil Trevett, president of the Khronos Group. Khronos, of course, is a huge standards body. A lot of the devices we use are very much based on Khronos' work. Srinivas Krishna he runs our company, and they're actually doing this wonderful augmented reality project with Fort York. And to his right is Ray Sharma, who runs XMG Studio, and among other things, there's a lot of other things, they actually did a Ghostbusters augmented reality game, which I thought was interesting. I want to know more about that. So, Jason, I'll leave in your capable hands.
Thank you, Neil. As Neil mentioned, I run a company called Next Gen Interactions that focuses on virtual reality and some augmented reality as well. So I'm just honored to be here with some of the pioneers that are really pushing the technology of what we can do with augmented reality technologies and the content that goes into augmented reality. And Neil did an introduction of the speakers, and so we'll just dig straight into it by each of the individual speakers, starting off with a position statement of where they see the technology currently is and also what it's moving towards. And then I'll ask a few questions, and maybe if we have time at the end, we'll open up questions for the audience. So if you have, start thinking of those questions as you listen to them speak, and I'm looking forward to hearing the insight from them. Up first, as Neil mentioned, we have another Neil Trevett, that is with the Khronos Group, and he also developed, really was the one who initiated creating the OpenGL ES standard, which I've read is over 1 billion phones per year, is what I read. That's kind of hard to believe. Maybe Neil can confirm that, because that's quite a large number. But maybe you could talk to us about standards and different technology, Nvidia, where Neil also is holds a position.
Sure. Hey, welcome to the best panel today. I'm Neil, and as Neil said, I actually have two hats today. During the day, I work at Nvidia in the Tegra Group. The Tegra is the mobile processor, so we're constantly working to bring the performance and the power into mobile devices. And at night, I run the Khronos Group, where we develop the API standards, open world API standards, to let developers access the power of that silicon. And both of those tracks, though, they're kind of convergent, because augmented reality is a really demanding use case that we're constantly using to push the technology forward. We do a lot of work in VR. Of course, VR is dependent on graphics APIs, Khronos has standardized, and yes, obviously, yes, does run on 1 billion devices every year. It's on, I bet it's in every one of your pockets, on every mobile phone, uses OpenGL for 3D graphics. But augmented reality goes another step further, and it brings in vision processing and technology to begin to mix the real and virtual worlds in increasingly compelling ways. We're not there yet. I think it is a good stretch use case that we want to develop. So in the standards track, for example, we go beyond just the 3D graphics into APIs for camera processing, for sensor fusion, for vision processing. Everything needs to be hardware accelerated. We're going to bring it down to levels of power and performance that real people could be able to use on affordable devices. On the silicon track, we need to provide vision acceleration, but eventually will fit in a radar style form factor. And that is a big challenge. We're actually quite a long way for being able to do that. But we think it's a worthwhile goal, because augmented reality we can be the next big platform beyond mobile phones. and also able to keep on doing this today, they'll be able to do this tomorrow, and it could be the next billion unit per year.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Up next, we have Srinivas Krishna, who runs the company, the Augmented World Engines, under AWE or AW for short. And he's been working on some different projects, including a ability to relive history through augmented reality. And he's based right here in Toronto. And so I'm looking forward to hearing about some of the applications he's been doing. Srinivas?
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming to us. I'm not really a technology guy. I'm an entertainment guy. And so when I came to augmented reality through doing location-based media for museums and other venues. And when I saw the mobile phone camera, what I saw was camera-enabled. I saw a video camera, the big screen and computer, and thought, I'm looking at the world through this camera. Why can't I put my cartoon characters there and interact with them in the world? And that's what led me and the company that I started into augmented reality, which I didn't even realize was a venerable science. It's been going on for many years with people who are much more capable and smart than me. What it became was a commitment to use experiences and really approach the whole question of augmented reality as technology and applications from the perspective of the user, the audience. What do people want to see? So we had a lot of conversations with some of our clients, and it resulted in this project that we're doing in Fort York, which is a tour across 9 acres, 100,000 people every year come there. And the idea is that they go to different sites on the ground, and through their mobile device, they witness a recreation of historical events that happened. It's a huge project, and what that led us to was innumerable challenges, most of which had to do with the device itself and the processor, and how limited that power is, and how big our demands were in terms of what we wanted to deliver people, quality of experience. What can I tell you now? We're building it. We've got some solutions, and we have a demo outside. The ground just shows you how far we've come. And what we're able to do now is really deliver, virtual characters in the real world, very economically, such that it can function on a Nexus phone, which I own, or a Nexus tablet. There have been some remarkable developments at the same time on principle of which is the Google Cardboard. I don't know how many here know, but it solves so many problems. Because for all that, started great looking content, we realized the biggest problem we faced was glare. You put up your tablet and there's glare and you can't see anything except the glare of the sun. And this was, the problem that would give us heartburn, and everyone's like, what are you going to do about the glare? You haven't told anyone about the glare problem, I said, we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. Don't mention it to anyone, I managed to get this sale, let's keep going. And sure enough, we'll talk about it. Who was it, SIGGRAPH in August? I was there, it's like a Google Cardboard. And it's only like $10 or something. At home, I brought it across my new bag. This is the solution, because you put your phone in and there's no glare. Suddenly you're there. So it's for me, the experience has been one. We have to really think about always what people like to experience. That comes from just being in the entertainment business. And this, to me, AR is really a continuation of things we've already done before. Video games, cartoons, interactions that we're used to having, and just saying, can we take it to the next level and put it in the real world? Can we allow people to be as mobile as possible so that what we're building? Because the mobility is not just the device, it's the fact that users are mobile. They're walking. And you want to be able to give that experience that people can walk around other characters and interact with them. And be in a completely interactive environment. And that's what he told through the kind of human-like interactions that we can have with virtual environments and characters. Can we make it as seamless as possible? So you don't have to be an expert to do it. It has to be as easy as turning on the TV for it to work. So these are the issues that we've been facing. And finally, it's about through that we can build narrative experiences, emotional experiences. And if we can do that, we can make the presence of those characters and that environment as powerful as that, then I think we would have gone somewhere towards making it a form that people will adopt. That's where that's where we have to look at it. We have to look at the use of it, the entertainment of it, how does it fit within our lives? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Srinivas. Up next, we have Ray Sharma, who Ray's very interesting because he's participated on both ends, all the way from the investment side to the development side in the mobile world. And he started several startups, including most recently XMG Studio. And he also was awarded for the Best App Award, some of you may be aware of, for the category of the Best AR App Award. He actually won that 2 out of the last 4 years, so he certainly knows what he's doing, and I look forward to hearing what Ray has to say.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my views here. So yeah, XMG is a mobile game studio. In aggregate, we've had multi-tens of millions of installs around the world. We have a game featured right now on the App Store, Best New in the US and a few different countries around the world. Best Refresh is called Cows vs. Aliens. But the augmented reality apps that we've been working on over the years, I would say, I don't know what the total install base is, but it would be less than 5% of our overall install base. The revenues have been okay. Like, you know, I think we track all the AR app revenues out there. I think Ghostbusters is probably in the top 3 for sure, maybe number 1 in terms of revenues, but the number's not that exciting. It's in several $100,000 per year. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a tremendous amount of monetization, but it's early days, and I'm hoping to share, you know, that perspective with you. I'm really hoping that AR is much more than games, and today I wanted to give you the perspective of the developer from a broad point of view, and as well as from an investment perspective. There's a company that I was involved in called Extreme Labs. I was the founder and chairman of this company. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my app experience so you can get a sense of where I'm coming from. So we built some local apps. You'll know the global mail app. We built that. The global mail CIBC app we built as well. But there's some others like Groupon. We were the only software consultants to Facebook in the world. We built the first version of Tinder at Extreme Labs. Believe it or not, it's pretty crazy. Through XMG, we worked with properties like Degrassi. Degrassi was top 25 grossing in Canada for about 6 months. It taught us a lesson that we really needed to monetize in the US in order for that, you know, to be really successful economically. We did a Ghostbusters game as well. As an investor, I was involved in a company called Locationary, which Apple acquired recently. They acquired Locationary to help fix their mapping problem. It's Apple's first acquisition in Canada in the last 10 years or so. So I guess there's 3 key takeaways that I'd like to, you know, give out to distill. You know, my key takeaways for you would be the following 3 things. Number 1 is that we remain really in the early days of the mobile application development when it comes to this technology. Ghostbusters won this award. I'm not very proud of Ghostbusters. I think it could be so much better. We're not doing enough of the interacting with reality, and that's the stuff that we're starting to deploy right now. It's very exciting, surface recognition, a lot of the visual technologies that we're working on and they're coming up. AR is, the second thing is AR is much more than games, and it can be much more than apps. What really interests me, what gets my passion going, the reason why I'm here today, is that I see AR as a potential whole new human-computer interface layer. Like, the movies have done a fantastic job, right, of giving us a sense as to how the future, you know, the stuff that we've seen in Iron Man, that guy actually is running an AR company, by the way, the artist behind that. But, you know, other movies like Avatar, you know, the Tom Cruise movie I forget right now, these ones show us a potential whole new human-computer computer user interface. I think that if you watch the movie Gamer with Gerard Butler, I think to me that explains quite a bit as to why Facebook acquired Oculus. If you want to talk about that. And the last thing is that, you know, when I go to the trade show floor, I see a lot of folks, developers, working in virtual reality. And virtual reality is awesome. There's no doubt it's so sexy. It's getting our attention because of the Oculus deal, no doubt, right? But think about the economies of scale. I just want to share this with you. My last point is that, you know, the total unit sales that expected by the end of 2014 of Oculus units is sub 200,000 of all actually VR units. The most aggressive consulting surveys out there by 2018 project 58 million total virtual reality, the most aggressive, and that's cumulative. Now let's compare this to augmented reality and what's possible with these devices. And one thing that I've learned through my experience, you can check me out, is I've been in mobile my whole life. And this is the board, man. It just assimilates technologies. You've seen it happen so much, and it's going to happen to that unit, those units out there. You're going to have your high-end sort of theater type of experience with your Oculus unit, the over-the-top experience. But for a lot of people, now, you know, this is a boom for these guys. They now have a reason to go beyond 2,500 DPI. You start going to 5,000, 10,000 DPI, and you hold this device within 2 inches of your face. I totally agree with you. That is, like, think about the numbers. We're talking over 1 billion units. Like, there's no consumer electronics, you know, market that survived in the face of being assimilated by this technology. We know this to be true. So it's going to happen to VR. So you know, it's interesting that a lot of people are focusing on VR. And if you're a gamer like us, like we would do VR. Gamer guy would do VR because it's cool. Why not? But this is where the economics and where the market will be. So.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Now we'll move on to some questions, and that actually brings up a good point, because I know there's different forms of AR as well as different forms of VR, and there's kind of a continuum all the way from real reality to completely immersive virtual reality. So I'd be interested in hearing the different forms of augmented reality and how that relates to virtual reality, and kind of your further thoughts that Ray mentioned.
I think most people experience augmented reality today in a handheld. That's exactly what you're saying. And I think most people's dream, inspired by the movie, is Iron Man. That's what the Iron Man was made. So I want it. So I think it's the mobile experience is very viable and necessary stepping stone. I think there's going to be lots of opportunities to bring interesting AI experiences onto the mobile device. But really, I think the event that's going to happen that's going to break out of being another mobile experience to be a transformative platform is when we can build wearable displays with our AI capabilities that can last all day, even recharging. There's a lot of engineering and silicon challenges to get there, but we will get there. It's kind of inevitable because the use cases are there. The consumer demand will be there. And there are also social challenges, I think, as well as technical challenges. The Google Glass experience, although it's not strictly AI, it is an interesting social experiment that's just happened. And if you have people wearing stuff on their face that doesn't look like glasses, if it's asymmetric or it's slightly weird, or it has a camera going, the social backlash is surprisingly strong. And you know, I think Google seems to be going towards watching it. Say frank. We do have lots of challenges, but I think that's what we have to do. Is going from this to this. That's the big challenge and the big opportunity.
different forms of AR/VR.
Yeah.
That could go in many directions.
Well, I just have one thing I'd like to add, and just to follow up on what Neil said, is we did a lot of user testing. We really start with user and what people are good with and what they're not good with. The thing about mobile is the tablet is our friend if you're AR, it's the right size. Tablets should be big, phone little bit too small, but that was the great device. The screen is just big enough. You can scale things appropriate to the world that we're looking at. In terms of the glasses, it's tough. You know, we did experiments with testing with devices, and it's quite tough. And I think the biggest reason is control. What we found people like is when they can control the experience. And again, this is why that hardboard is an elegant solution, because it's like binoculars, or something that people are familiar with, they can control when they're watching. I think that's a significant part of the factoring that has to be built into wearables, is how do you control that? Second part of it is that I want to talk about is VR. It's a complete virtual world. Discovery is not a problem. In AR, it's the entire problem. Is how do you know that there's something there to look at? How do you discover the content in the world? You're not walking around with glasses yet. You have a phone. How do you know that there's something to look at? So this is a big challenge. Is how do you deliver the content? How do you let people know it's there? How easy can you make it accessible to people to look up and, voila, there it is. You don't have to find a QR code or a marker or a target. It's just there. Sorry. I'm going to figure out there.
I'll jump in. So I think it's a good question because let's segment the different types of reality as well, right? Augmented reality is arguably could be defined as the interspersing of digital information in the real world. The difference with some others that are in the industry are they're starting to play with the A word, with AR, calling different things like amplified reality and stuff. And how those are defining things is that the technology is now interacting with the real world. That's what I really get excited about, is instead of it being a passive secondary screen experience, it's now an interactive experience. And then of course, different types of virtual reality. The reason why Oculus has not been released to the market is as follows. It's an optical nerve brain issue. If you guys go into the optics research websites, you'll stumble upon a dark science project where the Advanced Research Science part of the U.S. military has worked on a contact lens that currently has very rudimentary capability. I talked to the CEO of the company named Steve Wiley. It can do 1.8x zoom, not bad. And then it can do really crude, markers, left, right, basic stuff. So what kind of reality is that? And then we have this reality. This is the reason why I'm so interested in this personally, is because this is going to challenge our human limits when it comes to understanding our own reality. Now, don't get me into the deep end of psychology, because I'll go into multi-thousand-year-old philosophies from our ancient country, right? But you're going to have various forms of reality, for sure. And this is a metaphor for that.
I might just add one more thing about differentiating between virtual and augmented reality is, especially today, I think when we talk about augmented reality, we talk about mobile augmented reality. And when we say mobile, I don't think of just the device as being a mobile device. I think of the user as being a mobile user. In other words, they're in motion. And that is a critical challenge design point of view, that people have different points of view. And the point of view is always constantly changing as they're in motion. There's no single pivot or central point when we should design the experience. In other words, much like reality.
Ironic, as point of view, pornography is actually one of the biggest applications, early applications, when it comes to these glasses. I want to make one comment on these glasses, which is that when we were at the AR conference in the Valley recently, there was a really big AR conference in Santa Clara, and they had over a dozen different eyewear glass companies showing their next-gen stuff. One of which is the Epson device at $699. So one thing we should expect is there's going to be a huge rush of this type of hardware, which is great for the industry. One thing that was a clear takeaway from the experience in that conference was that where the economics existed in this industry today, it's in the commercial and industrial applications. Simple stuff like you're wearing a Google Glass, you're in the warehouse, you take two objects from this pallet and put it over there. Now I'm talking about the customers telling their real life stories about how they're applying AR. And it was companies like Boeing saying, we're designing, or Northrop Grumman, we're designing an electronic magnetic pulse. They have like a table and 6 engineers spatially designing components within the weapon. Or Newport Building, which is the largest shipbuilding company in the world. Their simple application is, where do we put the rivets? Do you see how this is where it will provide an economic groundswell for consumer applications to really take this thing to the next level? Google Glass has been called a project for a reason. But the best thing that Google Glass did for us in the industry is that it inspired all those other companies. And you guys saw how Google recently dropped $500 million on a startup. Magic Leap that nobody knows seems to, and the interesting thing to note, it wasn't through Google Ventures, it was Google Corporate. That's a very meaningful thing. That means it was probably a founder decision. You know, it was interesting because the Google CEO Eric Schmidt was in Toronto the other day, and his concern, $400 billion company, was asked the question, "What's your single biggest, concern or risk for Google?" It's what is that a developer creating in the garage? And I thought that was so amazing because it was so not egotistical for him to, so self-aware to know that Google was that company in the garage. And I think this is the opportunity that the companies that are starting up in AR have, because they have a way to present a whole new way to interact with computers. One last thing, and I'm done. I apologize for my pen. One last thing. And this is simple evolutionary, trajectory. Think about the compounding effect of Moore's law and the effect of these expert systems over time, and then the evolution of our own intelligence in comparison to that. It's interesting where this stuff's going, man, but you're gonna have some really cool stuff happening in wearables, and the Moore's Law effect is gonna create computers that are gonna really help us interact with the world.
I really agree with what you said, and that is, AR is being used today. Right? It's not just a future thing, we're talking about the future of glasses. But AR is here too, and it is the industrial manufacturing space where people are making money or saving money right now today. And it's a good beachhead for technology because if you're a warehouse person or you're a jet engine maintenance person, you're faced with either using the tablet interactively or a 50,000 page maintenance now. You can actually see the real value today of using mobile devices, their current capabilities, and you might have to wear a battery. You might have to process on your belt or other. That's okay, because it's a business use case, and the bottom line is the important thing. And there are people like the pioneers. Lots of people out there doing it right now, and that's another thread of the DNA strand that's happening and evolving as we speak. Is going to push this whole thing off forward.
That brings up a great question. Just a few minutes here, but so maybe one last question. But I was at a conference last week, augmented virtual reality in the industrial space. Some of the things you're talking about, training and such, and huge benefits and the economy of scale, how that will work. It makes me kind of think about that right now there's sort of the digital divide of the who has and who doesn't have. And AR, that may further that divide further, not just for the companies, us as individuals, or third world countries that report less well-off population. Is that going to further the DNA evolution of some people and not other people? Any thoughts on that?
Well, listen to Cisco. What we're experiencing right now is a huge phenomenon called the Internet of Things. They call it the Internet of Everything. And the total connection points on the network is expected to grow from 10 billion to 50 billion units. And what happens is, if you guys remember the original network, the more network points you add to the network, the geometric increase in the intelligence of the network. This is yet another thing that's underpinning this whole AR phenomenon, is this Internet of Things. And so this is happening right now. It's happening over the next 2-3 years. These are sensors all over the world, basically. And we've gotten to the point where the combination of a Wi-Fi and a cheap CPU is in 50, 60 cents. So any asset, if you look around, any asset literally that has over a $30 bill of materials, and if it can make sense and it's justified to network it to the internet, it will happen, and it's happening right now. This is actually, the thing, when I said earlier about the computer, the increase in the computer power, keyboards and mice, are you fucking kidding me? This is all, if we had a restart things where we had all our existing technologies, the human computer interface would be different. And what AR represents is a new way to introduce things like a Siri, but a Siri that is personalized to you and watches you all the time. And that's scary, yeah, but to help you is really so
I think whilst we're still in the development phase, probably not going to democratize information too much for a typical consumer in a developing country. But I mean, if you look at mobile phones, the fact that the $1 billion, that so many ownership, it's worth investing so much in driving down the cost of technology. It's a tremendous democratization effect on mobile phones and investing that's happened for democracy and information availability for a long time. And if we can make this the next platform, that'll be a thing where a lot of these developing things can skip over the keyboard phase and jump straight into this.
Yeah, I think absolutely. When you look at a country like India, that's a mobile country because the landline phones never worked there. I mean, when we were growing up in the 70s to call, so my parents would call India, they'd get heart attacks. Hello, you're just going to get a line. Everything changed with the mobile. It's a revelation. That he has been doing mobile payments now for years before we got on. So while the devices are not as powerful or cheaper, I just see those places as opportunities for AR, where we'll see different forms or different ways that AR has been used, or will be used and people here. Wherever you have literacy as a fundamental problem, the ability to speak and communicate with speech becomes an asset.
That kind of reminds me, I'm getting actually a smart home installation next week where I'll be able to control things through my cell phone and watch on video. It's not quite augmented reality, but those sort of technologies are coming into everyday use, so very cool things. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I have all sorts of questions. I'd love to continue the conversation afterwards, and I'm sure you all have questions as well.
Can I just jump in and say one last thing?
Okay.
I know it's really short, which is that everything inevitably becomes augmented reality. If you look at the patents that Apple just filed last week, it's all for transparent display. So think about it. Inevitably, everything is heading in this direction. It is the future. I can assure you on that. And just last thing, I just want to say thank you to Neil for organizing this and for everyone showing up, because we got to start somewhere, right? This is the beginning, and where it goes from here is kind of exciting. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Okay.